Rise and shine, campers, and don't forget your booties, 'cause it's cold out there!
I got you, babe.
The 1993 film Groundhog Day with Bill Murray is, in my opinion, among the best movies ever made. Oh, and by the way, there will be spoilers for a nearly 30-year-old movie ahead, so be prepared for that. Anyway, so this is the story of Phil Connors, who is a big city weatherman who is sent to Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania to cover the Groundhog Day, the emergence of the groundhog, to see his shadow or not, and predict whether or not there's going to be 6 more weeks of winter. When he's there, well, he has a terrible day. The Groundhog Day just doesn't go the way that he intends, and really he's a sour man in the first place going into this film. Phil has dreams of making it big and being picked up by a big-name network and becoming famous, becoming powerful and rich. He has very little respect for the people that are working with him. His producer, he doesn't really see as a fully fledged human being, although he does see her as something of an object, as it is later revealed. And also his cameraman, well, he doesn't see as worthy of any respect at all. He's merely a tool for Phil's fame and rise to stardom. The day doesn't really go as Phil intends. He plans on just doing the thing, which he sees a task as being below him. He's much better than just going and doing this silly groundhog thing. And then he plans on just leaving town and getting back to the city before the end of the day. But things don't go that way, really. He shows up in the morning and goes through the motions. He does the groundhog thing, plays nice, pretends to be enthusiastic about it, but not very well. But then, as the day rolls on, a storm starts rolling into the city. A storm that he, the weatherman, did not predict. Before long, it becomes obvious that he's not going to get back to the city tonight. The van gets stuck, the roads are closed, the phones are down. He basically is stuck in Punxsutawney. And, well, the day ends in misery. But then it happens again. The next morning he wakes up to a very familiar sound. It's the same song on the radio. The announcers are saying the same thing. Something weird's going on. He goes down and everybody thinks that it's still Groundhog Day. Is he seeing things? Is he hallucinating? Is this some sort of an elaborate delusion or dream or nightmare of some sort? Well, no, it turns out that he's now repeating his day. He goes through the motions again, works through it, is in utter disbelief when the same maladies, the same misfortunes befall him yet again. And then it happens again, and again, and again. It doesn't take long for Phil to realize that he's in a time loop. Every day he starts having the same encounters. The chipper man on the stairs on the way down that's making small talk, semi-successfully. The overly chipper innkeeper who's trying to be friendly and Phil's just not having it. Ned the insurance salesman who was an acquaintance of Phil's back in high school, whom Phil doesn't really remember because it wasn't important to him. Then he does the groundhog performance. He half-heartedly goes through the motions of making the performance to his audience. He speaks with his producer, he speaks with his cameraman, and then he gets trapped in the city all over again. And as the film progresses, though, these relationships start to change. He starts going through the process of, well, basically grieving, of loss. He starts with disbelief, denial, where he just can't believe that this is occurring. He's not willing to believe that this snowstorm has trapped him in Punxsutawney, and then he's not willing to believe that he's now stuck in this series of events. And then he ends up in bargaining. He tries anything to get out of Punxsutawney, to get out of this loop. He starts looking for reasons why he might be hallucinating this. Maybe he's got a brain tumor. Maybe he's having some sort of a psychotic episode. But then he ends up in anger. He starts becoming extremely frustrated with the situation, and eventually he starts to break down and starts taking it out on the people around him, taking it out on the world. And then eventually he falls into despair and despondency and tries to commit suicide at least a few times. But of course that doesn't really work because he's stuck in the time loop. Every time he succeeds in offing himself, he just wakes up the next morning as if it had never even happened. And it's only at this point that he starts to actually make progress, when he starts to realize that he's accepting his fate. He's stuck in this time loop and there's no way to get out of it. So instead of trying to destroy himself, instead of simply going through the motions, eventually he realizes he needs to start doing something different, starts to improve himself. And he starts not thinking of himself as the main character, not thinking of himself as the central person in the story, but rather just one other person, one person amongst many. And he stops trying to beat the situation, stops trying to be on top, and starts realizing that he himself needs to improve. One of the motivators of the plot is his romantic interest in his producer, Rita. Rita's a lovely human being. She's well-rounded, she's well-read, she has interests and depth, and is compassionate and kind, and does good things. She's not in it for the fame, she's not in it for the power, she's in it for living a good life, having a good world to live in. And at first, Phil just wants her to possess her, to have the pleasures that she can offer him. But over time, this starts to change. When his attempts at securing her, to possess her, end up failing, and failing miserably, he starts to realize that that's not the strategy. That's not the way to go about this. When he stops treating her as an object to be possessed, to be attained, and he starts realizing that he can only be with someone who wants to be with him, then he starts changing his strategy. Whereas before he was trying to perform at her, to pretend to be the right person to attract her attention, he's instead moving towards being the kind of person that he wants to be with, being the kind of person that he would want to be. And then naturally, she comes to be wanting to be with him. And as this change starts to take place, he's not actually doing things for her benefit anymore. He's doing them for general benefit, for his own benefit, for that matter. He saves the kid who falls out of the tree. He changes the tire of the women who are stuck with a flat tire. He learns to play the piano just because he wants to learn how to play the piano. He learns French for the sake of it, just to enrich himself, to make himself a better, more fulfilled, more satisfied person. Of course, he's not able to succeed in all of his attempts at making the world better. The man that he passes by begging for change at the beginning of the film, he later tries to help, tries to encourage to get healthy and provides lunch for and tries to save the life of. But no matter what he does, no matter how hard he tries or how much effort he puts in, the old man still dies. There's nothing that could be done. He's just too old, too frail. And this imparts some humility on Phil to realize that he's not in control of everything. There are certain things that simply cannot be changed. The time loop represents narcissistic self-absorption, where Phil was at first so concerned with his own fame, his own fortunes, that he wasn't able to see the world around him. He wasn't able to see anything but his own benefit. This sociopathic disregard for the feelings and the needs of others traps him in this lonely, isolated, boring loop where nothing good ever happens. But only when he stops using the time loops to indulge his own satisfaction and starts using it to help other people, to engage more fully with the world around him, that's when he starts moving towards freedom. Near the end, he even starts enjoying these loops. He's not just going through the motions anymore. He's not just doing the things because they're the good thing to do. He's doing it because they give him satisfaction. They enrich his life in a way that operating possessively and selfishly just can't. In the final loop, we see that Phil is fully transformed. He is a genuinely different person. And there's some argument to be made that this has taken years. Depending on the number of loops, depending on the interpretation of the film, it could be, upwards of 10 years that he's been trapped in this town, in this day. And so significant is his transformation that he's a completely different person by the end of it. It's only when he fully appreciates and fully dives into every moment of this day that he's finally freed of it. This could be considered similar to a concept from Friedrich Nietzsche, the eternal return or the eternal recurrence, wherein if you live your life in such a way that if it were relived over and over again, forever and ever, if you made exactly the same decisions, the same choices, take the same actions forever, again and again, and are satisfied in this, then you have lived well. And in this, Phil has lived well. In the final loop, he has made every decision, every action, acted in every way as to satisfy the selfless and most noble version of himself. He has attained the state of enlightenment, attained a state where he is free. He's free of his need to self-aggrandize, free of his need for self-satisfaction, free of his need to indulge and operate out of a selfish mode of operation, and free to be free from all of these things, and free to be the person that he wants to be. Will Phil return back to his old ways after this is over? No, I don't think so. Although he may slip from time to time, that same level of disappointment and basically torture that he suffered on February the 2nd would resurge. He would be experiencing that same level of misery if ever he returned to his old ways. So Phil is, by this experience, permanently transformed into a higher being, a better way of being that appreciates the interconnectedness of all humanity, all the world with one another. And we should learn this lesson. I'm trying to learn this lesson, and I must say I'm I'm guilty of some of these things that Phil is when he enters the movie. I am a bit of an egomaniac sometimes. I can be aggressive. I can be selfish. I have a high opinion of myself at times, and I don't like the way that I feel when I do that. I don't like being disappointed by the world not conforming to the way I want it to be. I'd much prefer to be in this selfless way, in this way of living for others that is also living for the self. It's the identification of the self with others that really gives Phil a measure of peace in this movie, and it could give us a measure of peace as well. We're not acting necessarily out of a set of rules that make us good people, that turn us, that enforce our behavior, but rather out of a general orientation towards one another that enriches our lives and enriches the world around us at the same time. Groundhog Day, of course, is not a perfect movie. It is a product of its time, and as progressive a message as it is, it suffers from issues of sexism and certain other problematic elements, but it is nonetheless a classic. It is a lesson that we can take that has applications to our real world. Anyway, I do these videos on a daily basis, so if you enjoy my content, come back again tomorrow for exactly the same video. No, not really. Subscribe for something else I'll talk about, who knows. So thanks for watching, and see you tomorrow, hopefully.